أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. We seek refuge in Allah from the cursed enemy, Shaitan, and we ask Allah for guidance. All praise due to Allah, the guardian, evolver, and cherisher and sustainer of all systems of knowledge. And we ask Allah to send, we put prayers, we ask for prayers that we placed on our beloved Prophet Muhammad, his companions, and his family alike. And we ask Allah to have mercy on us. During this time, we are having a Jummah alternate. I'm not going to say it's an official Jummah. I'm sitting down in this conversation, but we are going to keep our mind focused on Allah and those things that are the important matters for our spiritual and moral development. I'm here with my family. We're sitting down. I brought everyone to sit down to attend this discussion. While we were passing the days and weeks and months under the Corona house arrest or lockdown, we've been we had more opportunity and time to think things over and think about what we are doing as a family, as a people, as a nation, as humanity. And during this time, I decided to use this time wisely by looking deeper into Scripture and seeing what I can get from Allah's guidance in the Quran to help us with this time period. Now, during this time period, a lot of things have transpired. I went from not knowing exactly where we're going to be in terms of employment, in terms of location. We are currently in Dubai. We're not sure about getting back to the U.S. and if we're going to, where it's going to be safer. Is there any place we can actually go? Are we going to be in the are we going to be able to leave the country if it gets worse, or if it's safer to go back? And after the last week, they announced that America is #1 in terms of the reported cases of Corona. So that being said, there's no safe place on earth, so to speak, that you can escape this virus without having to think 2 or 3 times and without prayer. So there are times in our lives when we think we can just go to a highest mountain and escape a calamity. But in this case, Corona, we don't know. We don't know of a place that we can hide and be 100% safe without infection or without being caught under the influence of the influenza or the coronavirus. So this is, in one sense, is a bad thing, but in another sense, it helps you think closer on your Creator. All right, so one thing I was thinking about as I was looking through Facebook, I noticed there were a lot of people panicking. A lot of people showed signs of distress. And so I said, I'm going to first think to myself, what are some things that you should do under the most stressful situation? And the most stressful situation I could think of is like fighting in war. And during war and fighting, most people, they tend to react and respond in a way that they do what they feel helps them in that situation. But as a person of faith and as a Muslim, it says in the Quran that there are rules to engagement. There's rules to even fighting. The most extreme situation, you still have to keep your mind on the rules in the playbook that is permissible under Allah's watch. And during war is a very important time period that if you exceed beyond the limits, that you lose your credibility and you don't have any protection from your Creator. If you exceed beyond the limits, you have warning of a punishment from your Creator as well if you exceed beyond the limits. And there has been talk of conspiracy theory of somebody might have did this. somebody might have caused this type of plague to occur. And one of the things I thought of hearing this conspiracy theory, and I'm not saying that it happened, and I'm not negating it. However, in the event of biomedical warfare, this is something that has been mentioned and explicitly mentioned in Scripture. It is haram, is forbidden for people who are fighting another people. For the Muslim, it's forbidden for us to poison water holes where animals, human beings, and plants depend on the water. This is a common practice in many pagan and un-Islamic societies. When they're at war, they say, and there's no holds barred. If we're at war, we're at war, anything can happen. And they have no limits as to what they can do. And bioterror, or terrorism, as you can say it, is on the table. And this is a crime against humanity, and it's a crime against life. And the earth, some bio weapons cannot, the earth itself is going to be really hard for the earth to recover. So we can get so angry with each other and lose love so much that we jeopardize all of our well-being. There's stories of people who were on a boat, and on the boat, one group on the top of the boat started to get thirsty, and so they wanted to get water from outside in the ocean. They wanted to jump off the boat to get water. Or maybe I'm saying it wrong. There was one group that was in the bottom of the boat. They wanted water, and they were willing to drill a hole in the bottom of the boat to get the water. And there were people that were on the top of the boat. They were willing to jump off the top of the ship so they could enjoy the water that they were watching. So between the person on the top of the boat and the person on the bottom of the boat, they both had to regulate each other to prevent each other from causing the whole ship to go down. If the guys on the bottom drill a hole in the bottom of the boat, everybody sinks. If the guy on the top jumps off, then we have nobody. Everybody loses once again. So both decisions hurt the family. So let's think of this as in the sense of people at war angry with each other, getting desperate. And then one group uses tactics such as drilling a hole in the bottom or using biowarfare to attack the other guy. These are examples of things that are completely haram or forbidden. And this is wisdom. They said in early American times, there were cowboys who were chasing another person. The person who's being chased, what he does, he has a number of horses with him. What he does to stop the enemy who's pursuing him, what he does, he might shoot one of his horses and throw the dead body into the water. When he shoots the horse and he puts the dead body in the water, and he leaves 2-3 days behind him are the pursuers. So they come to the body of water and they start drinking, and when they look, they notice after 5 minutes that that there's a horse floating in the water, and there's flies on the horse. So so this is an example of bioterror. But these are just as an introduction to my conversation. But the conversation I really wanted to get to is Surah Ma'idah. Surah Ma'idah is the 5th surah, or the 5th chapter in the Quran. On the 5th chapter, Surah Ma'idah, it is entitled the table spread. Now, in scripture, there are different levels of conversation. There's the direct level, or the first grade level, or kindergarten level, I tell my children. The kindergarten level is like picture language, where picture language is like you see what you're looking at is what you see is what you get. What you see, what you get, that is picture language. That is the first grade level, or kindergarten. And so Ma'idah is the table spread. The table spread, I would compare it to like Thanksgiving dinner, but even more more important to Thanksgiving dinner. Thanksgiving dinner, you think of all these different foods. You got your stuffing, you got your turkey with the sauce, you get your sweet potatoes, you get all the nice fruit, all the food and fruit that you like. Now in my house, we used to go over my relatives, who majority of my relatives are not Muslim, but we would still break bread with our relatives during this time. But we had dietary requirements that we had to that we had regulations that we had to inform them before we would go to eat, because there might be some pork on the table, but under scripture we are forbidden to eat the meat of the pig. So we're not eating any pork, but we still go and we still show our love for our family. Now Surah Ma'idah, the table spread, they said that it's mentioning a lot of topics, but one is the main topic, the highlight is addressing the topic of the Last Supper. The Last Supper, regarding the story of Jesus, Prophet Jesus. In Islam, we know him as Prophet Jesus. In this story, it addresses that conversation of that time period where he had his Last Supper, and it's mentioned that the spread, the table spread, or the smorgasbord, or the buffet of food that was brought, came from heaven. So now it's mentioning that it came from heaven. So this is to teach, or this is a highlight, to highlight that this is not normal conversation. This is a spiritual language. This is now going up that ladder of conversational language. So this is when now we're leaving kindergarten language. Now we're going to a spiritual language. The spiritual language, it keeps going, and there's no, I'm not going to tell you where it stops, but we can start coming out of kindergarten and coming to a language that we can use for our benefit, with tools and instructions to help us in our daily life. Everyone is not going to be able to interpret. Everybody's not going to be able to get the metaphor of food and dinner and eating, and pull wisdom on how to select leadership, wisdom on how to interact on a day-to-day basis, wisdom on how to conduct business. Most people are not going to see any of that, and they will also dismiss what is being said as being something that requires faith in that particular religion only, or they may just completely walk away from it or laugh at it. And that's why it's written like this. Some of the tools and the treasures of paradise or heaven are not left on the ground explicitly for all to enjoy. They're there, they're present, but everybody's not going to enjoy the tools that are present on the ground. So people see jewels all over the place, but they don't know what the jewel is until after someone explains it to them and reveals it to them. That's why it's called revelation. Revelation is when you have jewels all around you, but you miss it. And somebody else, Allah sends a person to reveal it to you or explain what you missed. Some people, they see water all the time, but they don't know the difference between the different types of water. And they might compare Aquafina to the sink water, and somebody else might say, well, I got the purified, I got the top grade water, while you just drinking tap water. And so some people may, and then another person may not see any levels in the water that they're drinking. No problem. The same thing can carry on to other departments. All right, so back to this story. Chapter Ma'idah. I'm not going to go through the whole chapter, but I'm just going to point to a few topics in it. One thing that I talked about is the beginning of the chapter. There's 3 ayats that specifically address how we eat our food. And one brother told me that he was on the street, and then someone introduced to him the book entitled How to Eat to Live. And when they introduced that book to him, he said he was convinced that that God was with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I was, when he said this to me, I was about 20 years old, and I was, it actually went over my head. I said, well, how would you think that this person was coming from God solely on a conversation about his diet? He's, you know, this is something we take for granted, talking about your diet. And so I took for granted that this guy, he might be just he's a little too heavy for me. And he's like, yeah, he said, man, I was convinced that he was God when I read that to eat to live. Oh man, it blew my mind. I joined immediately. And so when he said this, I saved it in my memory bank, but then now I'm recalling this conversation I had 20 years ago with an older gentleman who became a member of the Nation of Islam after reading How to Eat to Live. And now I'm reading Surah Ma'idah, and it starts off talking about the diet. Now, How to Eat to Live, I'm not going to go in details on that, but I'll just say that the conversation of your diet is very important, of course, because if you can solve the mystery or the challenges of self-control with your diet, then there's nothing else that's going to be heavier than that. And so let's start off by explaining, reading what it says. So I'm going to read the first three ayats or pieces, the first three ayats of Surah Ma'idah. It says, "O you who believe." I'm reading in English. I don't want to use too much Arabic because most of my audience does not speak Arabic. When I'm with an audience that speaks Arabic, then I can speak Arabic fluently, no problem. We can have a conversation in Arabic, and we'll save that for another time. I think what's more important is that the food registers in your mind. If it registers, then you are an effective speaker. That's what the goal is, not to dazzle people and not to amaze people when they hear you using certain words that are spooky and exciting for them. And some people, we select people to lead us on their ability to be spooky or their ability to amaze us. And we have to get out of that. So, Surah Ma'idah, O you who believe, fulfill all obligations lawful unto you for food are all four-footed animals with the exceptions named. But animals of the chase are forbidden while you are in the sacred precincts or in the pilgrim garb, the Quran, which you use for Hajj. For God does command according to his will and plan. O you who believe, violate not the sanctity of the symbols of God, nor the sacred month, nor the animals brought for sacrifice, nor the garlands, and mark out such animals, nor the people resorting to the sacred house, seeking of the bounty and good pleasure of the Lord. But when you are clear of the sacred precincts and of pilgrim garb, the Ikram, you may hunt, and let not the hatred of some people in once shutting you out of the sacred mosque lead you to transgression and hostility on your part. Help you one another in righteousness and piety, but help you not one another in sin and rancor. Fear God, for God is strict in punishment. All right, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to continue to the next part, which is actually the thing that really got my attention. But this first part, I just want, there's a whole lot of that I'm thinking about. One, this coronavirus, they're saying, stemmed from the wet market in China. And in the wet market, they were accused of eating bats, rats, snakes, dogs, and they have pictures of all the dogs, snakes, and other animals that most people will not see as dinner, but most people will see these things as just life forms that don't necessarily need to be part of our diet. They don't need to be on the table. And I know many of us, when we were to see some of these animals on the table, it might turn our stomach. Because everything on earth is not to be eaten. That's the point. Some things are meant to, they have a job, and their job was not to be eaten. But if you are starving, who knows? You might eat something that you normally wouldn't eat for out of a desperate situation. But we try to avoid those desperate situations. And some people, and they're not under any duress or under any desperate situation, but they're eating forbidden things as if it's acceptable or is permissible. So so that's something that's on my mind too, is this idea of eating pig, snakes, monkeys, dogs, anteaters. There's another animal. I can't think of the name right now, but they're saying there's another animal that part of its protection is that it releases a toxin when you eat it. So this was it, pangolin? Yes, thank you. Pangolin. They said it releases a toxin so that when you eat it, you'll find out at the hospital why you shouldn't eat it. So this is some of the permissions. All right, let me get to the next verse. The next verse, it says, forbidden to you for food are dead meat, blood, the fish of swine. The flesh of swine, and that on which has been invoked the name other than God. That which has been killed by strangling, or by a violent blow, or by a headlong fall, or by being gorged to death, and which has been partly eaten by a wild animal, unless you are able to slaughter it in due form. That which is sacrificed on stone altars, forbidden also is the division of meat by rifling with arrows. These are different ways that the people used to prepare meat, or used to kill, or used to do religious sacrifices, and then they would eat afterwards. So it's just going down the list. I just paused for a second. These are things that many of us in the West, we are not aware of these different methodologies of preparing meat, slicing meat, killing meat. And so this is informing us of some ancient practices that people used to do with the meat. All right, so by rifling with arrows, that is impiety. This day have those who reject faith given up all hope of your religion, yet fear them not, but fear me. This is the law. This day I have perfected your religion for you, completed my favor upon you, and have chosen for you al-Islam as your religion. The submission to God is your religion. But if any of you are forced by hunger with no inclination to transgression, like basically if you are starving, they're not doing it out of willful disobedience, but you're starving, that this is a practical religion. If you have a pig and that's all you can find, you about to starve, and that pig will save your life. I don't know if there's a situation like that coming, or if there's a situation that has existed in the past, but if this is the only way you're going to live, take the pig, eat the pig. So if any of you, I'm going back to the verse now, but if any is forced by hunger or with inclination to with no inclination to transgression, God is indeed all forgiving, most merciful. So now this verse where it says that I have perfected your religion for you, this is said to be the last revelation to Prophet Muhammad. So now that brings me to think to myself, why is the last verse or the last conversation for the religion of al-Islam concluding with a talk or discussion on the dietary practices? And I've been brainstorming on this for some time, some years. One thing I decided to break down each section, and I'm not going to go through all the sections. I'll just go through one or two. One is the different strategies people use to get their food. And we're living in a time when people are talking about not eating meat at all. Some people have made it their religion to become vegetarian, and I'm not going to pass judgment on them. And in fact, I have a couple in my family. I love them, and we're doing it's an ongoing experiment to see what effect eating meat has versus not eating meat. We'll get back to that another time, maybe. All right, so one portion of this conversation got me to research, when will a person use a headlong fall to kill their food as a strategy? And I thought about the Native Americans. They had a strategy where they would take they would have on horseback, the Native Americans would be on horseback, and they would have a spotter who would point out where the buffalo are located from the hilltops. So he would point out where the buffalo are, and they would position themselves on two sides of the buffalo, and one person would be pushing the buffalo in a direction, and there would be one going one way and two on the side. So they on horseback, they're pushing the buffalo towards a direction that would end in a cliff. So the cliff is off. Let's say this is the cliff, and they're chasing the buffalo off the cliff. So the buffalo running away from the noise of the first one, he would use fear, and he would shout at the buffalo and say, "Ah! Ah!" He would yell and scream, make a lot of noise, and the buffalo would naturally start running. And the one that's the fastest and the one who's scared, the most scared buffalo, he's going to lead the way. Ah! He's got to get out of here. He's running full speed. So as he's running full speed, the other buffaloes see him running. So what do? They follow and they start running. But then as they're running, there's another hunter coming from the right, and then they go to the left. Another hunter comes from the left, and they start guiding them and funneling them towards the cliff. Once they get them to the cliff, there's another hunter at the bottom of the cliff. The cliff is here. At the bottom of the cliff, there's a hunter waiting for the buffalo to fall off. So the buffalo, they get pushed off the cliff. By the time they realize that they've been following somebody who's being led by his fear, they're at the bottom of the cliff. The Quran is saying that we can't eat that meat. This type of meat, I was thinking to myself, what could it be meaning beyond the surface? On the surface, this is good enough information. I'm satisfied. In the kindergarten world, I'm satisfied with this right there. But for my intellectual prowess, or for my academic mind, I'm looking to think if there's any additional benefits I can get from this verse. And what I thought about this verse is, I said, wait a minute, let's think about leadership. What if we have leadership that reacts with fear? Anytime he's scared, he just moves. Should we follow that type of leader? What if somebody is under duress and are forced to run in a certain direction? Is it wise for us to follow that person just because they're going fast and they're loud and they're out front? And I said to myself, no. Just because the person out front, does that mean that we are qualified, that he's qualified to lead us? And just because he's moving fast, he's really loud, that isn't necessarily show that that's a good choice or a good decision. And just because we're moved out of fear because of this coronavirus doesn't mean that we need to go and find someone to guide us now. We need somebody to guide us now. We might all die. We might die without a leader. Wrong. These are all incorrect ways to select leadership. I thought about a verse in the Quran. It mentions that they were a group that were in the army, and were on their way to the battle. But along the way, they came across a body of water. And it was said that if any of the soldiers drink from this water, they are not qualified to come any further. They have to go back home. Why? This is the why doesn't come in. It was just a statement or a test of discipline. The test of discipline is when it comes, just because you're hungry or thirsty does not mean that it's time to drink. It's not time to eat. As we said earlier, you might find out that water has a dead horse in it. So if you drink from the water, the well, with the dead horse, and I'm still speaking in symbolic language, what is the dead horse in terms of the water? And what is the water? Water represents revelation. Water represents guidance, revelation, and that which will clean you up. Water is used to clean you. And it's also needed for drink. You need to drink the water. That's the most important thing that you need to live. But there are sometimes, even when you are thirsty, if you drink from the well that's available, you might have to go an extra mile. You might have to go extra mile because the well that's in front of you is been tainted. It's polluted. You can't drink the water out the toilet. So some people they didn't get the memo, or they got the memo, but they were so engrossed with their stomach was so the pain and the urge for them to drink was so intense that they couldn't go any further. They had to drink the water, and they went they're drinking all the water, but the water that they're drinking is tainted. If only they had waited just a little while longer, they would have found that there was a well that was not too far away, and they would have survived. But in this case, if the well is tainted and there's poison in the water, pollution, even if you drink the water, you're gonna die. You're definitely gonna die drinking that water. The chance of you, no, actually open that. It was, I like that. So in that case, if you were to drink the polluted water, you're definitely gonna die. Versus the possibility of a little faith that you might die of dehydration if you go another mile or two, but at least you know you didn't drink the polluted water. So now we're in the time when people are making moves or rushing and panicking. And the panic that I'm seeing reminds me of the panic from the buffalo, also the panic from the army that wants to drink the water. We have a holiday coming next month called Ramadan. Many people have heard about Ramadan and have seen people fasting. I remember in elementary school, people say, man, you didn't drink or eat nothing all day. How do you do this? We used to run track. And many times we would be running track and field in the summertime without food or water. We would wake up in the morning before the sunrise, we would load up on water and we would pace ourselves so that we can get through the day. But when we had a track meet, we would have we did it so many years that we developed muscles that we knew that we had more space in our stomach and and then we had more energy that we could pull from, that we growing up in America, or being in an environment where there's always food there present. If you have money, of course, some people didn't have money, but if you had if your parents were working and they had food in the refrigerator, you always had food in the refrigerator, and so you never were fearing that the grocery store would be without food. And so this is a challenge that we had to that we endured and created muscles for us at a young age. There were adults who used to try to use this same principle. They would use this to attack Islam. They said, man, I couldn't do it. A whole day? Oh man, I can't go 3 to 4 hours without my food. But now we're finding out the people who eat nonstop, they are actually killing themselves. There's a show, somebody just asked me to go watch this show called What's the guy who makes the show, the eating show on the cooking channel. There's a show now that he made. I didn't watch it yet, but I'm going to watch it first chance. I just got the text message. It said the title was called "What is Eating America?" or "What is Eating Us?" And so I'm going to watch that to see what he's talking about. He's talking about the bad eating habits, and he actually confessed in the first 5 minutes that he himself has bad eating habits. And I watched that show and said, "Oh man, how could he eat that?" So I've seen him eat things that I wouldn't imagine eating. All right, so the metaphor of eating and what to eat, what not to eat, being selective, pacing yourself, not just jumping in, eating everything, and knowing what is permissible to eat and being obedient to that, but then also having a rational mind, knowing that if you're about to starve and there's some food there or something like a pork chop, and the pork chop is all that there is to eat. And if it'll save your life, dig in. But just know that that's under those circumstances, but not out of willful disobedience. All right, so this verse brought a lot of ideas to my mind, and it made me also think about growing up. My mother and father, ingrained in me the technique. I think this is coming from their time in the early beginnings of Islam in the U.S. We were taught that before we eat in the grocery store, my mom used to always take the time to read the ingredients of each and every thing in the store. And so I didn't understand why my mom just didn't go and pick this up, pick that up, pick that up. She would go and she would be reading, okay, this one has this and that. It has white flour, white sugar, and it has bleached flour. Oh, can't eat that. So she would put it back on the shelf. And I found out that some people, they knew that some of the dietary rules from the Nation of Islam, they knew the dietary rules in Islam, and they knew the dietary rules of the kosher dietary rules. So they know halal, they know kosher, and they know the Nation. One of the things that they started doing, I noticed, is that we would never eat anything white. They said if it was white bread, white sugar, or if it was bleached, that means that it was not natural. We had to eat something that was natural. If it wasn't natural, we wouldn't eat it. But one of the tricks that they did was they started, when I was in high school, I noticed that I used to pick out the brown bread quickly with the assumption that it was whole wheat. And the whole wheat a lot of times had the kosher symbol on it. And that's something I didn't address yet, but that's a lot later down on the road. It says that we can eat the food of Christians and Bani Israel and those who call themselves Jews, the kosher. We can eat kosher meat, and we can eat the food of the Christians and the Jews. So we can eat the food of Muslims, and they can eat. It says also, it gives instructions in the Quran that the Christians and Jews, can eat our food. And this is a statement. Some of them might say, well, why is God telling us that we can eat your food? This is to show that this book is not only for Muslims, but this book is for Muslims, and it's also for humanity. And it's a book that's confirming the book that came before. So what books came before? The Torah and the Injil, which was revealed to Prophet Jesus and what was revealed to Moses. And those books that came before. So it's revealing what it was revealed before, but it's also extending it and clarifying that which was said in God's name but was incorrect. So Allah is correcting it and confirming most of it. But what is being confirmed, what's being rejected? Let's find out right now. And this is only be part one. We'll probably have to come back to another time. All the other intricate details. But so I was thankful that my mom used to filter through the food and look at the ingredients, and she taught me that. And it would take more time, but I would see my friends. I would go over a friend's house, and they would have everything in their cabinet that my mom would put back on the shelf. And I could see the effects it would have on their face. And over the years, I could see a lot of times people that just ate anything, they were just drinking anything. You can see the toll that it took on their face. I have people that I've met that I thought that they were my age, but it turns out they were half my age. And this is not an exaggeration. I see people, and I automatically when they ask me this question like, "How old do you think I am? Tell me." Now these are even immigrants, and I say I do in my mind. I say, okay, he looks like he's 45, so that means he's 25, and I'm right half the time. This is a mercy from the Creator, and it said that Mary, the mother of Jesus, was given fruit out of season. She was given fruit out of season, and the fruit that she was getting out of season, what type of fruit come out of season? The fruit that comes out of season is that heavenly fruit. Heavenly fruit means that you are getting substance or benefits of blessing, revelation from above, from the Creator, that's going to help save your life. And so here we are having a conversation during Corona season, and one of the topics that they were addressing is the food market that they had in China. Was it true that it started in China's Wuhan food market? I don't know, and I'm not going to point that to them and say that this is why this is this is the result of what happened at the food market. I can't say that. I can't confirm that. I'm not going to even interject that. However, I know there's some foods that I won't eat and I will avoid unless my life depends on it. But if it's under duress, you have to do what will help save your life. All right, so continuing on Surah Ma'idah, I was sharing this with my family, and I noticed that, well, one thing some of you might not know is that my daughter is Ma'idah. She also has this name. She walked across the screen a couple times during this presentation. She's listened to me now, and I always tell her, your name does not mean just tablecloth. Don't let anybody table spread. Don't let anybody tell you that. Tell them that that's the first grade definition. But if that's what we say to kindergarten class, it means more than that, because they don't know what's on the table. And many of us, we are not even invited to the conversation. When they say, "Have you been invited?" You're not even invited to the table. What that means is that there's the use of the table is another way of saying the table of equality and the table of authority, the table of respect as a human being. Many of us have not been invited to the table of business. When they say in business, if you're not invited to the table, you can't even, you're not allowed to sit at the table. When I was younger, we had, at my cousin's house, we had a section of the house that was for the kids. We called it the kiddie table. So at the kiddie table, we had to sit at the kiddie table, and we would see the kiddie table didn't have as much food as the adult table. And we would always wish one day we could go to the adult table and eat with the adults. And every time we would come, we would say, "Man, we ran out of biscuits. Can we have some more?" So we would go straight to the adults' kids. "Hey, you go back to the kids section. Go back to the kids." And also the chairs were different. The chairs were different. The table spread was different. They didn't have plastic spoons and forks. I mean, they had napkins. We were wiping our face like this, and we had the plastic spoons and forks. And then all the kids, they would run and they would put their hand into the chips. If it was nachos, the nachos would be ripped up and crunched, and they would put only a little bit in the pot. So this happened every Christmas. Every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, they had the kiddie table, and we had the adult table. And who would have thought that, I've been waiting my whole life to get to the adult table, but once you become an adult, you get your own family. You can't even go back. You can't even go to the Christmas dinner with your whole family unless you're making the dinner table at your house. So I had to make the Thanksgiving dinner at my house when I became an adult. So I never actually got a chance to sit at the adult table for Thanksgiving or Christmas as an adult. And this is that's coming from the heart. I love my family, and they may God bless them, and I pray that my family in New York, New Jersey, and the U.S., in Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Chicago, D.C., my whole family all around the U.S. and around the world, I pray that you all have mercy and peace and blessings, and I pray that we can get through this Corona time period the right way, and let's use our time wisely. And how do we use our time wisely? You can balance yourself where you are managing your business. If you're using the online methodologies of business, you can use that wisely. Or if you have knowledge that you can pass on to someone else, this is a good platform to record yourself, share it. People can turn it off if they don't like it. This is a good time to learn the most important things, such as getting that heavenly knowledge and being invited to the adult table. Now, I wasn't invited to the adult table as an adult because I became an adult and I became my own adult and I had my own house. When I left, I ended up getting my own place where I could have my own Thanksgiving. And I was inviting my family to Thanksgiving at my house. So I never had the opportunity to sit at the adult table for Thanksgiving at my grandmother's house or any of my grandparents or my cousins' houses for Thanksgiving or dinner or Christmas. I had to invite them to my house for these events. But now, this is an opportunity for you to be invited to the table that God is calling you to. And I was the first one to that invitation. I ran. to that invitation, to the story, to the table of the heavenly food. So I was at that Ma'idah. I might have missed the other Ma'idah, but I was at the Ma'idah that counts. And so now I'm thinking about the story of Ma'idah and this time period, the coronavirus, and how we can use our time wisely. Let's use our time wisely by studying what did God want for us. Is this a time to say, well, we're being punished because of our deeds? I'm not going to use this time to say that. Is this a time to say, you know, this is a man-made thing, man is killing each other? I'm not going to use this time to say that either. One last thing there was a verse that I want to say that I didn't share before, is that there was a verse I've been thinking about for a very long time. And that verse is, you know, coming from a biology pre-med background, they celebrate Charles Darwin a lot. And a lot of times they celebrate him inappropriately, and they celebrate him as if he was a prophetic voice. And when I took that section or some of the chapters on evolution and chapters in his in biology 101, 102, comparative anatomy, genetics, when I was studying Charles Darwin's voice in every section, I thought to myself, I couldn't help but think of what the Quran says regarding this. And there was one discussion, and there's many discussions, but this is one. I'm just going to share one before I close. There was a discussion regarding overpopulation. And one of his ideas, that I'm hearing this on the TV a lot regarding Charles Darwin and his virus, and they were saying that with overpopulation, there's things in nature that come to curb the population growth, and they have population control by way of viruses and other sicknesses that come and stop the population by natural selection. So there's things in the nature, they're saying, that come and take away life so that other life can form, such as wildfires and floods and other calamities. However, they also were sharing that with wars and animals fighting each other, that this is also a form of population control. And they were saying it with a smile, like it was a complimentary aspect of Darwin's theory on evolution, that we have moments in our history that there's population control. And I thought to myself, if there's anything in the Quran that would address this, because I turn to scripture for guidance. I don't turn to Charles Darwin. I listen to Charles Darwin and I compare it to what it says in scripture. And what it said, one thing I read in Surah Baqarah, it says that there are some people, I'm sorry, it says that, and when it said, do not make mischief on the earth, it is said, I want to go to the actual verse. And when it is said, do not make mischief on the earth, وَإِذَا لَكِلَهُمْ لَا تَفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. And this is my little bit of Arabic that I'm going to use. It says, and when it said, do not make mischief on the earth, let me go to the actual verse. And when it said to them, make not mischief on the earth, they say, why? We only want to make peace or make it right. But of surety, they are the ones who make mischief, but they realize it not. وَإِذَا كِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تَفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا. That means, and they say, إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ, it says, indeed we are musalihun. We are the ones who are bringing the peace. Now, this made me think of a person who has the heart or the mind that they have to be the one to curb the population growth. So they have to do things to get the population down because there's too many of us. And they have a belief in their heart that if there's too many people, there's lack of resources. So they have to do things such as create pandemics to curb the population growth. Am I saying that this is what happened? This is what I'm hearing on TV, that some people are saying, are suggesting this might have happened. Well, if this is the case, this reminds me of this verse right here. And there's people, they think that they're helping us, but indeed it says that, but they are the mystery, they're causing the problem. They're not fixing it, they're causing the problem. There's another verse where it mentions about abortion. One of the signs of the last days, the child who has been aborted is going to be asked, what crime did they commit? And in Islam, Allah says, do not kill your children for fear of food or substance, to take care of yourself. Because you think you got 5 kids, you got 10 kids, you got, I don't know how many kids you got, but if you got a bunch of kids, some people say the reason why I'm having headaches and problems is because I got so many kids. Wrong. Allah says that He provides for you and He provides for them. So He's going to provide for them the way He's going to provide for you. And there's a saying that the Prophet said, if you got food for one is enough to feed 2 people. And food for 2 people is enough to feed 4 people. So what does this mean? That you can cut back. You can share. We waste more food than we know. We don't have to kill each other off for fear of food. And I've told all my friends, if I have something, and if we are on a journey, and I have something, I've got a sandwich, and it's me and you, then guess what? We both got a sandwich. We're sharing it. It's my obligation. But Allah says also, don't give so much that you yourself are in need and you're asking. Like some people, they ask me for some money. I gave to 1 or 2. You can't give to so many people that you yourself are like, please help me, help. This is excessive. You have to be balanced. Okay? All right. So back to Darwin. So if Darwin's theory is that population has to be curbed, and then he creates people who think that they have to do things such as release plagues and bioweapons, and they have to start wars. They have to do things to incite fighting and incite riots. This person, they think they're helping. Similar to the story of the devil in the Quran, it mentions that he thinks he's helping God. He thinks God missed something because he thought God wanted to select him. He should have selected him, but instead God selected Adam to be the caretaker of the earth. And he asked God just for some time to prove that Adam was not the one to be selected. So this selection process starts from the first man down to common days. And I'm going to close. Maybe we have to do a part 2 to continue where that's continued, because in Surah Ma'idah, Allah also mentions the children of Adam. And then in closing, the next verse, it continues talking about food, then it talks about the life of the Jews or the Bene Israel, then it talks about the Christianity and things that were lied on, stories that were said on Jesus that were not true. And Allah corrects them in this verse. And then Allah brings it back to the food. And it looks like it's out of place, but it's not. It's reminding you that this is still talking about food. That's it. Inshallah, we can have another conversation. May Allah forgive me anything I said and take it from my heart. And may anything I said or anything that needs correction, you can leave me a comment on my page, private message, or you can do communicate with me as you see fit. If you're able to get this message, that means you can communicate back with me. But thank you. God bless and stay safe. Follow the directives of those who know who are the best in your environment or your area to tell you how to protect yourself. Here in Dubai, you are not allowed to go out the house without a mask and gloves. I don't know about the gloves, but I know that mask is a requirement, or else you get a fine, a big fine for going out the house without gloves. Without a mask. But in your environment, please take the necessary precautions, because it's not a joke. This is real. All right. With that, may God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah.